FSN Radio. It's all about what's next. Go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com and sign up for your free weekly newsletter. You'll also get 3 free reports. The Financial Survival Network. It's all about what's next.
Welcome. You are listening to the Financial Survival Network. I'm Kerry Lutz. Today is 6/11/19. Well, just when you thought the blockchain was going to break out, hey, it hit that $9,000 barrier. Is it going to go higher? We don't really care about that. What we do care about is your view on it. So email us at kl@kerrylutz.com with your opinion of how high the blockchain's going. We're going to have a little contest. If by my birthday, let's say July 20th, you guess closest to Bitcoin, what the price will be, I will send you a pre-1965 quarter. All right. So all you got to do is email your guess what the price of Bitcoin will be on July 20th. But if I get closer than anybody else, nobody wins. That's the deal. Well, but so many other uses for the blockchain, facilitating transactions, going where no bank wants to go or allows themselves to go any longer. Well, there's a lot of uses. We're getting into this. I would almost call it a designer cryptocurrency or a designer blockchain currency. And each company, you can go create it and transact business on it. Well, person who's the expert on that is Chell. He heads up ICOX Innovations. They're traded on the OTC under ICOX and also on the Toronto Venture Exchange. And Cameron, hey, these are really interesting times for blockchain because whereas Bitcoin's kind of gone nowhere, yeah, I know it's tripled from its low, but it was at 20,000. Other currencies have followed suit to some extent, but what you're talking about is something completely different, isn't it?
Totally different. Bitcoin is an important. The underlying technology of Bitcoin is really important and fundamental to us. The price of Bitcoin, other than the sentiment around it, has no bearing on our business.
So, and your technology is a couple of steps beyond, because I've got some real issues with Bitcoin and security. Your security is way beyond what Bitcoin started out at, right?
Yeah. So a lot of the Bitcoin ethos, if you will, seem to really emulate from a place of anonymity and a place of kind of anti-establishment, if you will, not necessarily from a bad place. However, if we look at some of the history of everything from the Mount Gox and the Silk Roads and those types of things, that's I mean, I guess that's kind of like where some of its initial pubescent maturing started to happen. But the reality is the underlying technology that powers Bitcoin is incredibly powerful and is absolutely transforming not just business but culture itself. When you can add a technology into a relationship, whether it's a business relationship or whether it's some sort of like a transaction or a supply chain management relationship, and you don't have to have a third party in the middle, invoking the trust. What that really means is that you're reducing the transaction costs and you're making it much easier for an entire globe to do business together. So that's what really got us excited about being able to build digital currencies for specific brands or for specific enterprises that aren't based on anonymity. They're actually based on transparency.
Right. And so everything's out in the open, but the anti-fraud properties, everything else. And you're helping out industries that have been attempted to be shut out by the conventional banking industry, aren't you?
We are, and that's not by design, but it's certainly, we're certainly happy to be in that position to be able to provide, payment rails and a transaction infrastructure, integrated through the federal banking system with all of our money transmitter licenses, and in a way, in a manner that's 100% lawful, regardless of political sentiment or prejudice.
Yeah. So You've already put this into action, right? You've been doing this for a while now. You got the formula pretty much set.
I think, well, it's evolving quickly, but we do have a formula and it is working. So basically what we do is we design digital currencies for enterprise customers. So if we think about what JP Morgan has done is they've launched their JP Morgan coin. And that's basically a coin and an infrastructure that goes along with it that allows for their institutional clients to move money instantly around the world at a fraction of the cost of what it used to be. And that's the same type of infrastructure that we have built. If we think about what Facebook is doing with their global coin, which is about to be announced, it's allowing Facebook users, primarily and starting with WhatsApp, is what is expected, to be able to do peer-to-peer money movement, also to pay for goods and services, to pay for advertising on the Facebook in the Facebook ecosystem, but also to be rewarded or paid for their attention to advertising or for the sharing of their data. And these are just a couple examples of how branded digital currencies are being used, and they don't necessarily. They still have all the compliance and regulatory requirements, but they don't necessarily have the restrictions of what a fiat currency would have. They give the organization and the corporation a lot more flexibility while still staying within all of the rules and regulations. Now, the top couple hundred companies in the world, banks and tech companies, certainly are have the ability to build these themselves. I shouldn't say certainly; it's certainly not an uncomplex thing. However, the rest of the Fortune 500 or Fortune 5000, aren't going to have the technical ability, the engineering resources, the regulatory environment, the money transmitter licenses, et cetera, in order to build their own currencies. And so that's what we do: is we build those currencies for them. And we've got a couple of signature clients and a really strong pipeline, and we're really excited about what's going to be happening in corporate America in particular, but around the rest of the world as organizations roll out their own digital currencies, how they're going to interact and the benefits that will play out within the economy and to their end users.
Yeah, I can see that. So how many of the companies are really interested in doing this and setting up their own effectively proprietary cryptocurrency? And can individuals do it too? Can anybody do it?
Well, the barrier to entry for an individual to do it within the regulatory regimes right now is probably a little bit high. However, certainly from a philosophical standpoint, long term, maybe 10 years out, I do personally, and we internally, we do personally believe as an organization that everybody in the world eventually will have their own currency. And that's a much bigger conversation, but that's definitely where it's going. Listen, in the next 5 to 7 years, however, organizations at a blistering pace will be rolling out their own currencies, and their currencies will interact with each other seamlessly, and they'll interact with their consumers seamlessly. Depending on how preferred a particular vendor or supplier or customer is, they might have different terms on that currency. That currency will interact differently with every single supplier, vendor, consumer of that company, based on not just their personal preferences, but actually their personal habits, whether it's spending habits or likes or dislikes.
So as the consumer, do you basically waive your privacy over your data to partake in this marketplace?
No, not necessarily at all, and certainly no more than you've waived your privacy already by participating with anybody's app that you download or anybody's social network. I think what we have seen, however, is that as there has been justified pushback on the lack of protection of our privacy, and actually even more pushback on the notion that somebody else or some other organization is benefiting so greatly from our data. There's really one of the ways that they plan on combating this, both from a consumer kind of buy-in perspective, but also from a legal perspective, is to pay us for that data. And so I think in relative short order, you'll see the Facebook coin, the global coin, being used as a reward mechanism to pay us for access to our data. Because that data has become so valuable. So I think that'll reduce. I think the overall plan is to reduce Facebook's legal exposure by doing that. Also, I think from a consumer standpoint, it'll politically, hopefully for them anyway, start to sway the view that Facebook is taking, or organizations like that are. And I'm not saying they are, but it'll sway the view that they're maybe taking advantage of the fact that they've got access to so much of our data. So I think those are some of the motivations. But overall, the motivations that we're finding within our sales pipeline is that digital currencies are being adopted and looked at seriously by large organizations because it reduces transaction costs. So being able to have a digital currency that can instantly settle with another company's digital currency, or with your consumer, or for a payment, or for an inventory, or whatever the case is, because it's monitored on a blockchain and it's just a debit and a credit that's moving back and forth electronically, as opposed to actual physical, money moving in and out of accounts and such. Those transaction costs are really what's driving the first wave of the customers that we're seeing.
And you would buy these coins as needed. You wouldn't buy them in advance necessarily, would you?
Well, it kind of works a bit more like a wallet structure. So they're called coins because they're built on top of a blockchain and they're used to do transaction. In essence, however, underneath it, it's really a wallet structure. So you could go to, I'll use one of our customers, which is a gunbroker, for example. So we built them a coin called the Freedom Coin, which automatically does all the background checks for people looking to purchase firearms. It does the electronic money movement. It does the KYC, the Know Your Client, the anti-money laundering law, the Office of Special Assets and Foreign Affairs, and OFAC, all these different regulatory requirements, like all instantly. So it creates a much, much safer and secure gun transaction without infringing on the Second Amendment. And so in the case of that, you would simply go to the gunbroker site and you would have the option to pay with Visa or MasterCard, although there are a few banks in that particular industry that still allow that to happen. PayPal, Venmo aren't options in that particular industry, and many other industries like sports betting, which is being legalized and such. So, and you can right there at that moment, just by opening a wallet, you can be purchasing Freedom coins, and they instantly transfer back and forth between a fiat currency and the Freedom coin. They're a stable coin, so there's no exchange risk, and it just becomes an easier way to transact online with lower transaction costs. So quite, we very much in our betas have seen users at Gunbroker populate their wallet and keep a balance in that wallet, and then they'll end up using it for buying and selling their goods, or using it with other sites that are part of the affiliate program. So you have other outdoor sites or organizations that that sell ancillary type products, into the sports and outdoor and camping type lifestyle industry, and so they're participating in it as well. So you very well may keep a wallet that has a balance in it that you can use in a number of different places.
Yeah. So you buy into their currency, and then you immediately use that currency to buy something. Like, I understand what's in it for them because they don't have to pay merchant fees, which can be 2-3%. They can be substantial. But what's in it for the buyer? What do you, the buyer, get out of using a proprietary digital currency? Are you going to get a discount, or what benefits do you derive?
Yeah. So what's nice about this is that the merchant has the ability to create reward and loyalty programs to provide you very specifically the types of things that you're looking for. So a reward and loyalty program that's typically provided by a Visa or MasterCard right now are great, and they're really extensive and well thought out. But in general, they're designed to benefit Visa, MasterCard, as opposed to, say, Gunbroker or the Kodak One product or something like that. So we're really taking all the power that a Visa, MasterCard would have in terms of being able to provide reward and loyalty and data analytics, and putting that into the hands of the actual merchant. And what's interesting is you're the customer of the merchant. You're not necessarily the customer of Visa and MasterCard. So what's in it for you, I think, is a better reward and loyalty program. In many cases, you're actually able to transact electronically, and ultimately you will the price of the product is going to reflect in the lower merchant fees back from the merchant themselves.
Yeah, you know what?
Now, in the case of Cathio, which is a initiative within the Catholic community that's building out probably the best and oversimplified way to describe it is a PayPal for the Catholic Church community, and in that case, they want to support it, of course, because they want to support the community having overall lower transaction fees. They don't really have a unified way for electronic money movement. They happen to support relief agencies or pay for tuitions within Catholic schools or hospitals, or even to make donations at parishes. So so there's affinity in that particular network because of, I'll call it brand loyalty for a bad way to put it, but a way that demonstrates that, whether it's the Catholic community or whether it's, something like Gunbroker or, the Kodak One blockchain. These are highly motivated users that really support these particular brands. And so in doing so, they're able to demonstrate that and gain benefit from it.
I see. Where I see this really good? It's in when you use these intermediary platforms. So you never know who your customer really is. You never get their data. You never get to interact with them. Something like an iTunes platform or an Amazon platform.
100%.
They really hoard that information and you could get it. And it isn't always, they're hoarding it not necessarily for immediate profitability, but big data to build their database and to eventually monetize it in ways that aren't necessarily in the interest of the so-called content provider or seller. So this would be a great thing to really enable and empower those people selling music and other digital content that have to go through an iTunes. Yeah, it really could. And don't get me wrong. I mean, I actually think we'll see an Amazon come out with their own coin. I mean, that's likely an organization. They certainly have the horsepower and chops, and et cetera, to build their own. And again, because these coins have big advantage for them to use too over just a Visa and a PayPal, or they have different advantages. But in terms of brands that need to interact directly with their customer, and as you have just so eloquently put it, not be disrupted by an intermediary, 100%. They're gonna want to build their own network effect around their own coins. Yeah, for sure. So this is not a great thing for for Visa and MasterCard, and I guess American Express as well. This is kind of eating into their piece of the pie. What are they going to do to respond to it?
Well, listen, they are very, they're very well established and incredibly smart at what they do. I don't think they feel overly threatened by this. They've got, massive market share. And I do think that you will see them adopting blockchain type technologies internally as well over time in order to help accept these or work with these types of payments. However, there's as big of a market that Visa and MasterCard have. There's an even larger market that's completely untapped because these digital currencies do so much more than just payments. So if it was just payments, then we could be fair to say, hey, listen, we're going to eat into Visa and MasterCard's market share. But the fact of the matter is these things do so much more, so they actually create a bigger market. There's no reason that with a coin of a particular brand that you're not just doing payments and reward and loyalty, but that you're also able to do surveys, right? Because you have an electronic access into something that has KYC and AML. You know exactly who that customer is. So you can do very, very specific customer surveys using that same wallet and that same coin infrastructure. You actually can provide instant credit through that coin as well. So anyway, long story short, I don't think Visa, MasterCard are at any risk of being displaced as a third-party payment mechanism. However, there is a brand new market that is a trillion dollar market of corporate currencies where they will be providing a number of those functions traditionally outsourced to Visa, MasterCard. They will now be doing them themselves.
Hey, so Cameron, this is fascinating. And, because as far as it supplanting fiat currencies and all that, hey, we could talk about that all day, but I think there's definite issues there with why it's going to be slow going. But with this is a kind of thing where it's in the company's interest to do it, especially if, say, you're a defense contractor and you've got all of these suppliers that you need to buy from. So getting them into your coin will make the whole invoicing and money waiting process, all of that really has the potential to speed it up. when you've got these networks that really aren't linked up on the payment end and the billing end, because then the invoice gets tied right into the order, to the inventory, to everything. So the blockchain has secured that you have indeed gotten the product and you owe the money for it and you pay for it all more or less in one step, right? Do I have that right?
You have it nailed down exactly, which is a much better example than the one that I tried to give around why this is still very different than Visa, MasterCard. You don't see Visa, MasterCard, in a dominant position or, catering to the enterprise level, AR/AP, accounts receivable, accounts payable, or supply chain management. And that's where, if you've got an organization, call it XYZ, Fortune 500 company who has their own currency, that this currency absolutely can be used within their supply chain, their AR, their AP, their treasury management, as well as their consumer-facing payments mechanism. So it really becomes a treasury mechanism at the highest level, and that's that's not a tomorrow thing, but that's the next 3 or 4 year thing. Those are conversations that we're already having, deep conversations with customers as to how this affects their balance sheet, how this not just reduces costs of payments and AR and AP and transactions internally, but how it's an actual asset and how it physical and goodwill.
Yeah, and so because every year companies across the country and the world pay out billions of dollars in fraudulent invoices, especially the U.S. government. But we're not even talking about them. Just a multi-billion-dollar company. You have purchase orders and you have all this stuff, but people can figure this out. They can pretty much break the system, hack it, and pretty much take over. And you see it kind of regularly, especially with all the hacking taking place. So they can hack your company's computer, input those invoices into your accounts payable system. You don't even know it. And only through the blockchain can you really stop this. And I'd venture to say companies with humongous supply chains are victimized by this type of thing virtually all the time.
Yeah, and fraud happens on great examples, and fraud happens on lots of different levels. Sometimes it's very subtle, sometimes it's insidious, sometimes it's even unintentional. But then it kind of gets accepted and becomes unintentional, or accepted practice. And so when you're asking organizations to be compliant on all kinds of government regulatory issues and accounting issues through GAAP and IFRS and all the type of it, you can simply program it all in now. So the whole compliance and regulatory regime is really starting to grasp a hold of this, which I think is betterment for everybody. So that I think increased transparency and lack of anonymity in general actually creates a more frictionless environment, as opposed to maybe what some of the early ethos of the industry was, which was kind of the opposite and kind of built around anonymity and secrecy and such. So certainly we are all about protecting rights, and I think we've seen some good examples around that in some of our customers. But overall, if you've got an immutable trail of what's happening, and you know what, you're going to have a system that's cost efficient, and ultimately, right now, that's what's going to be driving adoption.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of like the smart contract, but it really goes beyond the smart contract too, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Really does.
Great example.
So, interesting times here, and it sounds like you're kind of on the cutting edge of it, and not a lot of other companies doing this, is there?
Well, we haven't come across anybody that's doing specifically what we're doing. There's a few different iterations of it and kind of offshoots of it. And how we make money is basically we have a development fee for building the infrastructure for a particular organization that varies on the complexity and size, obviously, of the task at hand. We then earn basis points on the transactions that go through, a very small amount, usually around 0.02% to 0.024, basis points on the transactions. And then we have a monthly maintenance fee for our SaaS platform, which helps either Treasury or the CEO or the C-suite, if you will, help manage their reward and loyalty programs and transactions. Depending on the size of organization, it pays for itself very quickly, not just in terms of customer adoption and loyalty, but just in terms of the transaction cost saved. So We're pretty excited about what we've done. We've announced 4 customers to date, all of which are about $2 million development fees plus ongoing transaction and long-term SaaS contracts. And we've got a really strong pipeline going forward. We think post the Facebook announcement, that pipeline will only get stronger and probably speed the sales cycle up.
Hey, this is a really exciting area. This is where the blockchain really excels. There's nothing else out there that really can do this but the blockchain.
No,
and I think
absolutely,
the companies just have to keep in mind that loyalty is a two-way street. So just because you sign up for rewards, if you keep messing with that program and keep cutting the benefits to your customers, I don't care how good your coin is or anything else. Eventually, you become offensive. And there's big companies out there that are doing this right now. I'm talking airlines. I'm talking coffee chains. The bean counters get a hold and they say, well, gee, if we cut 10% of our costs here, that would go right to the bottom line, not thinking the fact that they're going to upset 17 million people. But hopefully your guys, your clients, and your future clients will be more enlightened about this, because loyalty is a two-way street and it's a double-edged sword. So you can't expect loyalty if you don't give it, and you have to have inherent fairness. And that's what I like best about the blockchain, Cameron, is the inherent fairness of it. It doesn't discriminate. It doesn't say you're a millennial living with your parents, therefore you are less desirable. It treats everybody equally and fairly. Whether or not you have adverse effects as a result, nobody can, that's up to you to figure out. Well, hey, so just tell us again, what's the company's website and how do we connect with you?
Sure. So it's icoxinnovations.com. That's icoxinnovations.com. And you can find all our contact information there. We trade on the OTC bulletin board and the TSXV, the Toronto Venture Exchange. And we're super enthused about how this market's unfolding, and really appreciate the time that you've given us here today.
Hey, my pleasure. ICOX on the OTC and on the Venture, Toronto Venture. Hey, don't forget, questions, comments, send me an email. We're running a contest. What price do you think Bitcoin is going to be on January 20th? I'm going to publish my prediction, and then the winner, the person that gets closest, will get a pre-1965 silver U.S. quarter. I think they're 90% pure, if memory serves me correct. I said 70% yesterday. They're actually 90% pure. Sterling is 925, and you see that's the originally British inscription for it. So U.S. junk silver, as they call it, others call it constitutional, is 90%. And hey, blockchain it's really, Cameron, it's amazing. It's permutating. It's just taking over. And people think because Bitcoin, it's trading at less than half of its peak, that's kind of the end. But no, that is really the end of the beginning, to coin a phrase from Winston Churchill. We're about to see an explosion here of blockchain apps on every level of society that will really, if done properly, even at the governmental level, it could be major limiter of fraud and bad behavior, and which means effectively increased accountability at all levels of society and transparency, something you really made a great point of illustrating, Cameron, that will really make the difference in where we go in the 21st century. So ICOX, check it out on the TSX Venture and on the OTC. Wish you the best of luck, Cameron.
Thank you so much.
We really appreciate your supporting the show, being a sponsor, and we'll definitely check in with you in a couple of months and see where this is all heading.
Look forward to it. Have a fantastic day.
FSN Radio. It's all about what's next. Go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com and sign up for your free weekly newsletter. You'll also get 3 free reports. The Financial Survival Network. It's all about what's next.